This is Sober Mind. Here we go. Good morning, everybody. Judi.
Good morning.
Patrick. Yes. Happy Saturday. Welcome to Sober Mind. Today we have a very special guest, Judi's father, my father-in-law, who I affectionately call Dad. He is my dad for all intents and purposes. Good morning, Dad. How are you?
Good morning, John, and good morning, Judi, and good morning, Patrick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, let me get everything settled and ready to go. I was telling Dad at this stage, Patrick, I need a production assistant. I'm too busy running around in the morning.
Guess what you get, Patrick? A new job.
Yeah, right. Voluntold.
Okay, the agenda for today is, like I said at the beginning there, we're gonna talk about what's been going on for the week. Then we're gonna have just a chill, casual conversation with Dad. Thanks for volunteering, Dad, to be on and talk about almost 80 years of history.
Yeah, God.
World War II.
Yes.
There's some perspective. Okay. I just wanted to tell everybody, in case you didn't know, our little dog Penny passed away on Tuesday. We had to have her put to sleep. It was quite the emotional event. So Judi and I have been
We're still reeling.
Yeah. She was with us for 13 years, and like Michelle reminded us, and I didn't even think about it, we had 3 dogs, and they've all gone to doggy heaven, and that was the last one of California. So
Yeah.
anyway, may she rest in peace. Okay. And I was telling Patrick, I had to drive up to Omaha on Wednesday. That was a long drive, 3 hours of deep thought. I got like halfway and I used the speech to text Patrick and said, I'm having a rough time. This is the longest drive ever. So anyway, thanks for being there, Patrick. Judi, thank you for being there and I was there for you.
Thank you for being there for
Thanks,
me, too.
Thanks for being married to me. Okay.
Ditto.
Dad, you ready?
Yeah.
Let's jump
Go
into
for
it. Okay. Dad, I have known you for 21
20+
years. Yeah, 20.
Yeah. Wow.
We met in 2002.
Yeah.
Judi and I got married. I never even asked you.
No,
So-
you all of a sudden you were at the door, and I was introduced to you when you came in, and by that time you'd already been married.
Yeah.
Well, we did call you and let you know we got married.
Well, true.
We didn't just show up.
Hey, so for the record, sorry about that.
As it was, it all worked out.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll give give the folks a little bit of history. In 2014 and a half or so, you moved out to Greenwood, Missouri.
Right.
And then, as luck would have it, you ended up being able to move in literally to a house next door to us.
Right.
And in November of this year, it'll be 3 years. We bought this house in Lee's Summit, only about 5 miles up the road from Greenwood. And we now live together.
Right. Right.
Dad says that with regret.
No, I don't. No, this has worked out well. A lot better than I ever thought.
It has worked out very well. Just maybe some experiential thought for anyone that's going to do that cohabitation. It was quite the adjustment in the beginning. I didn't really realize that you go through a pretty substantial mental change. But what happens is you end up developing habits. And for anyone that does a roommate situation, you know what you have to do? Establish some ground rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all there is to it.
Yep.
That way there's no...
Ground rules and boundaries.
Yep. That way there's no passive aggressive, why did you eat my yogurt, you dick?
No, we
the-
just
the
give him his
other-
little fridge downstairs, and that's all taken care of.
the other thing too is that you have to be fairly open about it, and if something does bother you, you have to be open enough to say this bothers me, and whether they can adjust their attitude or not matters to them. But you have to be kind of open about it, because if you don't say anything about it, it all just sits in there and festers, and gets worse and worse as time goes along. So when you first start, get it all out there, and whether it's accepted or not, that's the way it is.
Yep, we're not mind readers, right? The best we can do is clearly articulate our needs, wants, and desires.
Yeah.
When we're at home, we're kind of in our element, so we have our own unique quirks. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to explain
Yeah.
that to others.
Yeah, it is. It is good though to have your own little space.
Oh,
You're
here,
all
here.
in one huge house, but if you've got your own little space, you can go and just be yourself and not have to worry about it. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, here.
Man, for the record, these are Rode pod mics in case Rode is listening to Dad's awesome voice.
Okay.
Sponsorships available.
You pick up his frequency on the spectrum very well.
For sure.
Yes,
Natural at it.
That's right.
open to do voiceovers.
Yeah. For a low fee. Okay, so that is a segue into our deeper discussion, Dad. So yeah, it has worked out very well. I really enjoy it. I'm going to tell you something that makes you uncomfortable. I know you won't respond, but I'm just going to do it. I love you very much, and you mean the world to me.
Thank you.
Okay. Dad, let's do this. Where were you born?
I was born in Pontiac, Michigan. My parents lived in a little town called Walled Lake, which is outside Pontiac, of course. And that was where I lived for the first 5 years of my life, 6 years of my life. And then we moved to Jackson, Michigan. And then we moved to Bay City, Michigan. And then we moved back to Walled Lake. And then we moved to Jackson. And then I spent time up in Tawas. And then I got married for the first time.
All right. We'll save that marriage discussion for a whole nother show.
Yeah.
Okay. Dad, how was your childhood growing up?
My childhood growing up was fine. It's just my mother was kind of cold, and my father wasn't there most of the time. He worked for the railroad, and he was on the fast track, and he was gone a lot. So, I really didn't have that much of a connection there. My brother was more of a connection than anything. He gave me my first BB gun. He gave me my first bike. He gave me my first jackknife.
Fred?
Yeah, my brother Fred. So my mother was not the hugging type. So, I kind of turned off, if you will.
She was not very demonstrative with
not
any
at
kind of
all.
affection.
Not at all.
Is there any particular memory or, I don't know, feeling that you have with that? I had very similar, where my dad was like, I put food on the table and clothes on your back, so you should be grateful type
Yeah.
of,
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. There was food on the table, and I had clothes on my back, and what more do you want? When I was growing up and in school, I went out for football. My parents came to one football game that I was in, and when we got home, I got criticized for what I had done in the game. So, that's how I was raised.
That's interesting, Dad. You've you've held on to that exact memory for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, it kind of hurt. And I will say this, though. It made me different. And so if my kids went out for any kind of sport, I was there to encourage and help as much as I could.
Coached our soccer team.
Yeah. Yeah, I coached soccer, or little girls soccer for 2 years. But I tried to encourage them. I try to give them everything I didn't have.
I can see that. You're a very generous man.
Thank you.
So is it fair to say, Dad, or do you remember, were you lonely growing up? And plus you guys moved, since your dad was in that career path, you guys moved a lot. How many schools did you go to before you graduated?
I was in 11 different schools before high school.
Good grief.
So you learn how to make friends or not make friends rather quickly. And most of the time I was always the new kid in the class.
That's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. Especially if you're a teenager.
Yeah.
That's where it's the worst. If you're, a toddler or not quite a teenager yet, it's not quite so bad. But once you get teens, then it really starts to affect you.
Yeah, I always had a hard time with the toddlers in high school. It was weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
Okay.
All right.
With that, did you develop any, obviously with your story about when you had a game and you came back and your parents criticized you, you felt like that's a very persistent memory, but at that point, a lot of things had already formed in you. Did you develop any coping mechanisms at that point, or were you aware of any of how you were processing with the isolation?
Yeah. Basically, I shut down. I did not allow myself to have a whole lot of emotion because that way lies madness. And so I basically shut down the emotional side and, did the intellectual thing instead. And I think I partly do even today because it's sort of a hangover. I try not to. I really make an effort to try not to and be a little more emotional. But I'm more of a intellectual, if you will, sit and analyze.
So would you say like you buried yourself in studies or knowledge
Correct.
to avoid? Okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Yeah. I basically shut down emotionally. And that's why I'm a lot better now, because I don't want my kids to go through that.
Is that where you think you picked up the desire to read so much that you like to do?
Yeah. Reading was an escape.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, when all else failed, pick up a book.
Yeah.
And it was an escape, and I didn't have to deal with every day.
How was it with your siblings?
With my siblings, with my sister, I get along very well. And I think the reason is that she's a lot like I am. With my brother, it was always, he was a lot better than I. Let's put it that way. He was very clever with his hands. He made friends automatically. So it was, he and I had a good relationship, but it was kind of different. With my sister, she's a lot like I am, and so we get along very well now. We were apart for quite some time, but for the last, say, 10 years, we get along very well.
What was the age difference between you and your siblings?
My brother was 10 years older than I, and my sister is 13 years older than I.
So you basically grew up
as an only child.
Yeah.
And my
When did they leave the home?
Oh my sister left. Oh my, just after she got out of high school, so I was probably 5, and my brother left. Oh gosh, when I was probably maybe 10, if that. Yeah, maybe 10, and he left also. He went in the Army, and then he got married and was living in Colorado. So I didn't see him. And my sister lived in another part of Michigan, so I really didn't see her either.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just now realized, because whenever you talk about your childhood, it's always just solo Kellen.
That's why.
Yeah, I never, you know what, that sounds crazy. I never put 2 and 2 together about Fred and Valeria.
Yeah.
That they weren't really part of the childhood. That's interesting.
When your siblings left, what was their relationship with the family, with you and your mom and your dad? Did they pick up and start their own lives, I guess?
Yeah.
More for
Yeah.
Did they, I mean, was there continued contact, or was it like they were just, I've had my fill, I'll see you guys later?
Yeah. Peace out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It was kind of both. It was, I hate to sit on the fence, but it was yes and no. My sister lived in another part of Michigan, so we really didn't see a whole lot of her. She was also having marital problems, and so we really didn't want to involve in that. My brother lived in another part of Michigan in Colorado. So when he was in Colorado, we went out to visit once, and he was there for 2 years. And so basically I saw him once in 2 years. And then when he came back to Michigan, he was in another part of Michigan, and he had a wife and children, and they would
So he
would
basically
visit.
had his own life.
I'm sorry?
So he basically had his own life, and
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very interesting childhood dynamic.
Yeah.
so when you were younger, and your parents already had 2 children, and all of a sudden they found out they were pregnant again. Did the dynamic with your parents, with their other children and you, was it different?
Yeah. When my sister and brother were children and growing up, my folks didn't have a whole lot of money and didn't have a whole lot of anything. And when I came along, much, much later, my father had a little better job, and they had a little bit more money, and so we could travel a little bit. So yeah, the dynamic was a lot different. If you talk to my sister, there wasn't a whole lot of money, there wasn't a whole lot of anything. When I came along, there was a little bit more money, and so I probably got to do things that they couldn't.
All right, we're going to get into some heavy-hitting questions in a sec. Dad. We're going to shift gears, but Michelle would like to know, how did your parents' marital issues affect you?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. In fact, I wanted to leave home. They were pretty constantly fighting.
When was that? How old were you when this happened?
Oh, I was a teenager. Yeah, I was a teenager.
So if you were a teenager and your siblings had left, so that was just you and your parents in the household, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever feel like you were a direct target of isolation from kind of their issues over spilling?
Yes.
Frequently?
Yes. Well, all right, I'll give you an example. My father liked oatmeal cookies, and my mother had a Fostoria hobnail cookie jar that was full of oatmeal cookies. They were fighting one time, And apparently my mother got upset, picked up the cookie jar and threw it at him. And she missed and hit the wall instead, and it crashed against the wall and broke into many, many pieces on the floor. And yours truly cleaned it up.
I see.
So that's an example. And yes, my parents affected my marital relationships. I think when I got married the first time, I was probably trying to escape my parents. There was a lot of feeling there. Don't get me wrong, but I think that there was also that feeling of I wanted to escape my parents.
Yeah. I've heard that from Mom as well. So
Oh yeah.
having you both go into that relationship trying to just escape your home environment doesn't
Oh yeah.
not very conducive to a very good relationship.
Yeah. That's the whole thing too, is that what I tried to do is to do the opposite. And so that my children wouldn't have to go through the same experiences that I did. And so, yeah, it affected my marital affairs.
Yeah, there's some good questions there. We're gonna circle back to those, Dad. Thank you for being open and vulnerable. It's a very good discussion. It's interesting dynamic. Okay, Dad, we've known each other, like I said, for 21 plus years. Did you ever think I was an alcoholic or had a drinking problem?
Again, yes and no. Mostly no. But every once in a while, you exhibited alcoholic behavior. But most of the time, no. Most of the time, you're a pretty pleasant drunk.
Patrick, I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
How do
interesting,
you
you know.
unwrap that?
Yeah, to start, you know, it's interesting to say that you exhibited alcoholic behavior, and then on the other end of the spectrum was you're a pretty pleasant drunk. In my mind, you know, when I was a pretty pleasant drunk, a lot of those tendencies were alcoholic behaviors. Does that make sense? Not only the ill affecting stuff is necessarily just the alcoholic behavior. So,
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, you know, have another drink. It's good for you. You know, you're doing just fine. No problem. I can handle this, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and you and I used to go out, especially on Saturdays, and do a lot of drinking together.
Yeah, Judi was working, and so John and I would go out for lunch. And
Surprised they made it home.
lunch was usually about 3, maybe 4.
Big IPAs.
Yeah. And then we would drive home.
Yeah. So I take it, Dad, and I'm assuming that you never felt. Let me just ask: did you ever feel like you might be in a position to tell Judi and I, "Hey, you guys might want to slow down a little bit"?
No, I really didn't. In fact, I did not feel uncomfortable because I was drinking right along with you. And so, you know, we kind of fed each other. And, you know, if you wanted to go out and have a good time, you bet, let's go. So I'm not sure that I had as many alcoholic tendencies. I maybe did. I don't really know. But, yeah, it was a good time.
Yes. Hold on. There's some stuff to unpack there, Patrick. I got like 5 different things going on because here's the history. And Dad is right. It's very interesting. I'm just gonna open it up. Dad is way healthier mentally and physically now than he was 6-7 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, even 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, and the reason, a lot of that has to do with the fact that when we started cohabitating here, Dad was leaning into the whiskey rather strongly.
Yeah.
And
Brown liquor.
yeah, a lot. And coincidentally, Judi and I got sober 18 months ago, and we didn't go into our sobriety with the intention of coming down hard on Dad about his whiskey consumption. I keep saying whiskey consumption because I'm going to get into a different portion of that. Even when we were drinking, we were concerned about that consumption because, Dad, you're no spring chicken.
Right.
And so, the equilibrium, and what Judi and I really didn't like about it was when Dad would be in perpetual hangover mode, is that he's an extremely intelligent individual. He smokes us on Jeopardy. Not all the time. Sometimes I get the best of him on it, and Judi does too. But
Yeah, but never play Trivial Pursuit with the man
Yeah,
who will
right.
stomp all over you.
what was frustrating and scary to see was we could tell that there was the everlong hangover when Dad's intelligence was wavering. We told him on several occasions before we had let's call it a mild intervention, that, man, this is the part of your identity is your intelligence, and when you're drunk or in a hangover, you're kind of dumb.
Yeah, the mental acuity is very diminished. Plus the balance too was not there. And we would go on vacations, and he'd be staying home, and we'd think, okay, he's got a couple dogs, and we've got huge fish tanks. Well, we would call, and it'd be fairly early in the afternoon, and we can tell he'd already had a few. And the first thing that I'm thinking is he's either going to fall, or he's going to fall head first into the fish tank, or the dogs are going to get out and he won't realize for a couple hours later. And so, and we're away, we're 12 hours drive away from the house. So we can't, pop back in and say, okay, well, we'll just stay home. So yeah, we had to have a little bit of an intervention with Padre.
Yeah.
Not intentional. It wasn't, you're right. We didn't go into this sobriety thinking, okay, well, we're going to drag Dad along with us. But
no, I think our sobriety did give us some clarity to have a more viable discussion, if you will.
Yes.
Dad, I'm not attacking you or trying to shame. What I'm doing, probably in a bad way, is congratulating you. Dad, so as of March, Dad hasn't drank or gotten drunk.
Last March, not this March.
Yeah. So March. Happy year, Dad.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very proud of you.
So, and I'm going back, Patrick. Dad is one of the Sarahs, we found out. It's very interesting. He would just always get carried away on the whiskey to the point to where it's alcoholic behavior for sure. But when he quit that, he can literally have a beer or none, and that's it.
Yeah.
He goes on vacation quite often where, Michelle and Guy, they don't drink, so he just doesn't drink. You know what I mean? So it's a strange paradox to have witnessed an alcoholic behavior to the point where you have to have several discussions, right, Dad? And be like, hey, you got to stop this madness. But then you have we had these weird bargaining situations, like we know you can still drink a beer or two or three, and then that's it. So I don't know.
Emily said congratulations, by the way, Dad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How does it make you feel, Kellen, that they're, them expressing their concern for you on that?
Oh, when the last time that we had talked about booze, it was, I was drinking a lot of the hard stuff. And when we had the discussion like that, I said, okay, fine. And I stopped drinking the hard stuff. And I have maybe 2 or 3 beers, and that's about it. Sometimes I've even gone and had one, and that was all I had. Apparently, I'm that kind of personality, if you will. I won't use the word alcoholic, but I'm that kind of a personality where I can have, a couple of beers and I'm done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think with the hard liquor, it was basically all or nothing. I mean,
Oh,
once
yeah.
you started, you were full bore.
Yeah.
But with the beer, he can have like 1 or 2 beers with dinner, and then go downstairs and
Yeah.
not have any for the rest of the night.
Yeah. There have been a lot of days where I have had maybe one, and that's it. And then there are a couple of days that I've had 3. And I just have that kind of a personality that I can do that. It's like, oh gosh, this was probably 5 years ago. I quit smoking, and it was on Thanksgiving. I ran out of cigarettes, and I thought, well, good a time as any, and so I quit smoking. It was the same kind with hard liquor. I quit drinking hard liquor after my intervention with Judi and John, and there have been days that, boy, I'd sure like a drink, but it's been like a year now, and I drink a couple of beers and I'm just fine.
What do you like about not drinking hard liquor?
The mental part, the balance will never go away because I've got neuropathy in both feet, and so that'll never go away. But the mental acuity, I've noticed it myself that I'm a little quicker.
A lot
Sharper.
A lot quicker.
With age, of course, you aren't that quick, but I am a lot quicker now than I was when I was drinking brown liquor.
Yeah. So again, we I don't want to belabor it, but Judi and I really appreciated that, because her and I would have discussions quite often that revolved around us being afraid of you declining physically and mentally rather quickly. And it's like, selfishly, we're like, shit, we still got a life to live, and if that continues down this path, he's going to be bedridden, needing
24/7 care.
24/7 care and stuff like that. So
you guys would wind up being a nurse.
Yeah.
Did John and my sobriety have any effect or any help with you deciding you wanted to get rid of the brown liquor?
Yes and no. Again, I sit on the fence a lot. Do you and John and then Michelle and Guy don't drink, so I can drink around you, but I don't get shit-faced anymore. And I have, I can drink around you, have a couple of beers, and you don't seem to mind. And that being the case, then it makes it easier for me to stop drinking.
Do you approach your drinking with a consciousness of making sure that you wouldn't ever overindulge? Would it be embarrassing to you, Dad?
No. But I just don't. I mean, I don't know what the reasoning is. I just don't. I quit the hard liquor. It's been a year now, maybe a little bit more, and every once in a while I miss it. Sure, I'd like to have a drink. It's just like I miss, every once in a while I'd like to have a cigarette. But I don't, because I know once you start down that path, there's turning back is really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask a question, and if it's out of bounds, you just let me know.
Sure.
And it's a little bit shifting gears here. How did it make you feel watching your daughters deal with addiction?
I never really it would bother me a little bit, but not a whole lot. Michelle she wasn't really a heavy drinker. She would have, a mixed drink or a glass of wine or something like that, but she never got into the sauce really a lot. And I didn't think Judi did. But
No, Michelle's drug of choice was pot, not alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There was a news article a while ago that Michelle Bergstrom almost eradicated this planet of the marijuana strain.
Tried her darndest.
She tried. I was right along with her.
So no, I never really put two and two together that either one of them were alcoholic or either one of them were potheads.
Not even Michelle?
No. Well, Michelle probably a little more because she would get pleasant most of the time.
I have a question. Did and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. If you were to actually dive in a little bit deeper on Michelle and Mai's addiction, would that have caused you to look internally?
Wow, that's a great question.
I was about to ask something very similar.
Probably.
Would you have not wanted to do that?
That's a good question. I really don't have an answer for that. No, I don't think it would have. No, I really don't think it would have because I like the brown liquor, and whether anybody around me liked it or not, I like the brown liquor, and so I don't think so. I think I liked it enough that I would have continued.
If I were to ask, do you see any similarities, or do you feel that there's any similarities between you and your parents and you and your kids?
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Like as in,
my father liked brown liquor. He would have it a lot. He wouldn't have it as much by the time I got to be a teenager. But before that, he drank a lot. And he had a thing, he would give it up for Lent. And he would give it up for Lent. And then as soon as Lent was over, why, it was back again. And he liked Grand McNish Scotch. He was a big Scotch drinker. And he drank beer, hardly ever drank wine, hardly ever. But my mother was probably more of a teetotaler.
Did you notice any of that, his use of alcohol contributing to the arguments that he would have with your mom?
Sure. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. There were more than once that he had to have help get to bed.
Mm-hmm. Man, out of all the conversations we've had with ourselves and friends and everybody, it's like the patterns are it's just textbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all laid out.
Yeah.
With the brown liquor, as I guess we're calling it right now, did you feel any kinship to that? Very similar. You mentioned, intellectualism when you were younger to turn towards to encase yourself. Do you feel that there were any similar veins with the whiskey?
Did you ever use it to mask the any kind of emotions that were going on?
No, I just enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked the taste. I liked what it did. I don't think I was masking anything. God knows, maybe, a psychiatrist would sit down with me and plan it all out. But no, I just liked the taste and I liked the effect that it had. And, I was a pleasant chunk.
What effect do you remember the most from it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You said you liked the effect that it had.
Oh, yeah, I got pleasant. All my cares went away. I just got very pleasant. Everybody around me was smiling and having a good time.
We were not.
Were there any things that, obviously that means there's stuff that was unpleasant?
Oh, yeah. Oh, very much so. When I was married the second time, Gail and I would sit around and we would have like some wine or something like that, but we never really got into the brown liquor. But
No, but Gail definitely liked gin.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, when we would go out, she would have gin. She had a martini or gin and tonic or something like that. But when we were home, like we would have the kids, and we would all sit around the dining room table and play cards and like that, and we would have a bottle of wine. So, we like that. But after Gail died, I kind of got into it a little bit more because I was lonely. And I lived by myself quite a few times before I'm right now. So I was lonely. And so a drink would make the loneliness go away.
So there's a masking that we were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
So again, Dad, thank you for making the compromise, but I think it's important to know that me, Michelle, and Judi, we always had conversation about your drinking. Mm-hmm. We didn't think it was pleasant. It was something that really bothered us.
Yeah.
We were very worried.
Yeah.
We're very grateful that you gave it up.
And Michelle put a note on here, and it says, I remember vodka and Fresca in Sierra Madre. I don't remember that.
Oh, I remember that.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I don't remember that at all.
I remember a lot of nights where there was stumbling into chairs and a lot of giddiness and a lot of playing Trivial Pursuit, answering all the questions but not being able to read the cards. Yeah, I remember a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
Michelle says we would get very drunk in Brea.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dad. And Patrick, what's your go-to for the vulnerability? I forget your quote that you use quite often.
I got a couple. You're gonna have to dig through the sack. Like, we don't own the actions of others. That one.
No. Thank you.
Thank you for being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Let's honor the space.
Yes.
That you brought to share and discuss that. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. Thank you, Dad.
Surprisingly enough, it is. It's rather easy. The older I get, this is one of the delights, if you will, of age. The older I get, the more honest I get. And that being said, my feelings, if you will, are a little more honest. And I don't mind being vulnerable. As a, growing up and in your 20s, 30s, and like that, you're invulnerable. I mean, you can do anything. But the older you get, you accept the vulnerability, and you can be that way and not feel bad about it.
Yeah. Dad, how do you think your relationship was with your daughters about 10 years ago versus now?
It's much better now. Far and away, much better now. Yeah, it I can accept them more. I can understand them more. But I have also learned to keep my mouth shut, because sometimes they do things that I really don't approve of. But, shut up.
Do you like
Because
tattoos?
one, it's not going to do any good, and two, it just makes me mad, and three, it'll make them mad. So just shut up. And I've learned to keep my mouth shut.
Well, I mean, you're not. That kind of sounds dramatic. You're not
Oh.
actually. You're finding specific points when to abstain.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
abstain being the better choice of the confrontation or the conversation.
I had to learn the lessons of life, and my children have to learn the lessons of life. And that being said, I can help to guide them if they want to listen to me. But basically, they're going to have to do it on their own. And that's one of the things that I've learned, is that I can tell you, but whether you want to take it or not, that's up to you.
Do you feel like you have to do it all on your own?
No, not at all. All four of my children would be more than happy to take care of me. God, I hate that term, but any of them would be more than happy to take care of me. So, I have a support system.
That you do.
Yeah.
How does it feel that you were able to give, albeit imperfect, a better, you sought out to do what you set forth from your parents? You wanted to give your children a better life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very much so. And I think that I think that I'm succeeding. I really do. All of them have a roof over their head, food in their belly, clothes on their back. If anything,
And you do give us a lot of affection too, Dad.
Yes.
so God forbid anything happens, I'd be there in a heartbeat. I want them to be better off than I was.
Dad, we're going to have you on again because there is several hours of stuff to dig into here. But I don't want to feel like we're prying.
Oh, no. I'm, like I say, I'm a lot more open now than I ever have been in my entire life. Most of the time I was pretty closed, and most of the time I was pretty shut down. So I've learned that why not? I mean, it's not going to hurt anybody, and it's not going to really hurt me, and probably I'll feel better, and probably my children and whatever will be able to better understand me.
Agreed. Do you?
Go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to add, I'm confused over the last couple minutes because you talked about being empowered to talk about your feelings more. And I, quite frankly, as a grower, older, not giving a lot of F's. But then you, at the other time, talked about like very particularly indirectly, like saying like I've learned to, shut up. If I say something they won't be happy, then I won't be happy. So I'm trying to sort through those two extremes right now.
Okay, it's called diplomacy. And that being said, then, if I say something that's like that, they might take it the wrong way, if you will. And really, it's kind of none of my business, and I have to figure that one out. But as far as I am concerned, I'm far better. You know, it's personal, if you will, selfish even. That, you know, as far as I am concerned, I can sit on the sidelines and watch.
So, Patrick, you as more of the outsider in this, what's important for you to know is Dad despises confrontation.
Yes,
That-
very much so.
I can tell he probably wore a lot of stuff in childhood. You know,
Yeah.
internally.
Oh yeah, very much so.
So what Dad has done to himself is a little bit of a disservice because he plays the tape completely forward in a conversation sometimes when trying to give feedback to others, and if he doesn't like how that tape's going to end, he won't interject. Is that fair to say, Dad?
Wow, yeah, that's very fair to say.
Unlike you and I, we just spit it out there and give our thoughts. Dad likes to make sure that he keeps a relationship non-rocky.
Yes.
But he does give his opinion in fast. He will
Oh yeah.
give his unvarnished opinion. But you have to ask for it.
Yeah. Here. Yeah, exactly. You have to ask for it.
It's not always offered.
Yeah.
Patrick has some burning questions, I can tell.
I
See
do,
the
and they're
smoke
very
coming out.
they're very. This is the work we are talking about. Very intense and very emotionally vested items close to our chests that we have worn for years and decades. You know, my, and again, you know, we're just in conversation here. So if it ever out of bounds, you just let me know. But my question is, if you've played the tape forward and you've felt like if I were to say something and they wouldn't take it, you know, you talked about them not taking it appropriately or not, you know, they would react adversely. Like, I want to better understand what that fear would be. Like, if they don't take your suggestion well, what are you fearing, or what is that feeling to you?
I don't want to get in an argument with them. I don't want them to feel as though I'm judging them. Because they have to live their life as I am living mine. And you have to be comfortable with what you're doing. And that being said, then, I don't want to make people uncomfortable.
If they felt that you were judging them, how would that make you feel?
Horrible. I mean,
Like-
ours is not to judge.
Like, do you feel like the love would reciprocate? Would they still love you?
Oh yeah, they would still love me. They might not like me, but they would still love me. But you have to just mind your P's and Q's. I mean, you don't just blurt out, you know, you're an idiot, and here's why you're an idiot. I mean, there's no sense in it.
Dad, what if I told you that as the patriarch of this family, some of us may count on you doing that, though?
Oh yeah. Oh, when it's appropriate, I will go ahead, but you know, to what end? That's what it gets down to, is what will it accomplish?
It helps us sometimes. We don't know what we don't know, and sometimes we don't even know the questions to ask. You've got a lot of years on us. And if you were to say, hey, what I think you're doing could be done a little bit better, those benefits are there. And I'll tell you, you have been my surrogate father for a long time. You're a huge part of my life, and the guidance that you give me, you know, I take a lot of it. Some of it I leave, but
I do hope so.
I would encourage you to, if you tell me something, even if it's unsolicited, or Judi or Michelle, we all have very strong personalities, and we may get pissed off. and it might be a confrontation, but you know what? It's stuff that we may need to hear. You might be doing a disservice by leaving some good guidance off the table sometimes for fear of retribution.
No. For instance, when we lived in Greenwood and we lived next door to each other, you guys were out brewing beer in the garage. It was summertime. And I said something. I forgot what it was now. And I said something, and you did not appreciate what I said. And 2 days later, you came back and told me that you did not appreciate what I had said. And you told me why. And after I thought about it, I thought, yeah, you're probably right. So I apologized. And that kind of confrontation, if you will, set me on the road to where I am now. And, you know,
You think you were wrong to say what you said? Like,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to ask is,
Yeah.
like, given you your situation, I'm sure you said it for a very good reason.
No, I think I was probably drunk.
Well, and so was I.
Yeah.
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 What I'm trying to say is that that talking afterwards and John coming to you and saying, you know, I didn't like what you said, you know, it's also accepting the fact that that's who you were when you said that, Kellen. It's not a bad thing. Like, we have to sort through that stuff together afterwards. So what I'm trying to say is, you are wise and have many, many years of sharing stories, and just know that you are loved. Good advice, bad advice, anything in between. And just being engaged with your family is the important part. It's not going to be great at times.
Definitely.
But
And
that's,
I think
go ahead.
ahead. Well, I think what Michelle says that she used to do was to go along to get along, and I think that is not the best thing to do, especially if you're living all under the same roof. We talked about when we first started this about boundaries and about ground rules and the like. But if you're still going along to get along, um, there may be things that make you feel uncomfortable, but you're not saying anything to us because you don't want that confrontation. But if you were just to say something to us and we go, oh, okay, and completely, change what we're doing or adjust, then there would be no confrontation at all. I think the fear of the confrontation itself is what is stopping you sometimes from expressing your own needs or wants.
Well, I think that's a good point, Judy. You know, I think that's where I personally struggled with, because there are times when I feel confrontation arising where it feels at unease, or that I have difficulty communicating with somebody. I mean, let's be honest. And if you're in the middle of talking with somebody and you just feel that instantly, the emotional reaction is visceral. And I'm going to be honest here. Sometimes I just want to be like, yeah, fuck you, pal, get out of here, like, or just like, like, I don't know how to respond. And that's where like some more unease comes with me, is like, I feel opposite of this in this situation, and I don't want to freaking be here. And my responses were very similar, where I would turn to intellectualism, or I'd bury myself in books, or I'd just say, you know what, those emotions are bad. We're just gonna, here's the bottle, I'm gonna put them in, and then we're gonna put them up on the shelf. But my point with that is, the struggle is like, being vulnerable means coming to somebody and saying like, I am having this problem communicating with you, and I don't know how to go about it, and we don't have the words for it yet. Sometimes, it comes out as like, when we don't have the words and we act from the emotion, it can come from a place of hurt and saying like, I fucking hate you, or, the thing that you did, you're, where we would either project or, put bad emotions on on that person. So learning to do so constructively, like when we're cohabitating, it forces us to dig deeper in that dialogue that we can do so constructively with ill emotions. So I'm proud of you for, like, coming on here today and doing this, like the fact that, your living situation, that you've continued to that dialogue and look inward. It's very admirable. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I think you hit the word. You said the word that really
Resonated.
works, and that is constructively. And that's the word
Yeah.
that really works. You can not confront, but you can talk about things. But if you talk about it in a constructive manner, then that's a whole lot more than the accusatory. You're doing this. I don't like you doing this. Why are you doing this? And stop it. That's not constructive. But if you say something about, this is kind of making me feel uncomfortable, and if you phrase it in that kind of words, then I think it carries a lot more weight.
Speaking from the eye,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the operative word, is constructively.
It's so hard. I come on here and like to spout quotes and everything, but quite honestly, there may be a part later in the day where I'm rolling around upstairs and I wheel around to the bathroom and I have to be like, I have a 5-year-old son. I'm like, why the fuck is there a toilet paper roll in the toilet and everything? It's like, I have to be like, all right, let's constructively talk about why we don't put whole toilet paper in the toilet. Like, it's an exercise that it's the work that we get to do every day.
Yeah.
And it's also granting you the grace that, like, we've developed our tools and our personalities, as you would call them, over the years. And that's okay too, if they're not perfect, knowing I can't be 100% of the time. Right. So if I get mad at my son, I know that I struggled, that I would get mad at myself again.
Yeah.
Buddhists call this the second arrow. It's learning to treat yourself with the compassion to say, like, look, I may have said something out of line, and John iterated back or communicated back that he didn't like it. But you know what? I know John loves me, and that I love him, that we can work together constructively to talk about this.
Yeah.
And that may be like, all right, let's pump the brakes. I'll let him cool off for a bit, or I need to go to my space and compress and process these emotions. You talked about individual spaces, Judi, and I think they're not only important for reprieve and what somewhat isolation or disconnection, but they are wholly important that we can process these things. And you have to let yourself do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too about it is that if you are in your own space, you can think about things if you're in your own space where there's no one else around, where you don't have to talk to or be involved with anyone else. And you can be involved with yourself and think, all right, where do I go from here? And what do I do from now?
Yeah.
This has been an awesome conversation, Dad. Look at that. An hour flew by.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me I think we're going to start to unwind this real quick.
Oh, okay.
Do you have anything for me, Judi, or Michelle, or Patrick?
Oh, yeah. Oh, very definitely.
What do you got?
But I think that we've been talking for an hour now, and do we really want to go another step
Yeah.
Uncork it. If it's too big,
Let's do it.
we're adults here. We can shelve it and move on
Okay.
to at
All
another
right.
time, or we can talk about it now.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a 3-part question. And
All
that is
Well, there's 3 of us, so we got it.
and that is how did the military change you? How did marriage change you? And how is age changing you?
Oh, so they're all you, babe.
Yeah. The military was 100% necessary for me. You guys have heard my mommy dearest stories, so it was very apropos, and it gave me much needed structure and guidance. It wasn't perfect, but it was a really good index. I had a tough time embracing a lot of it, but looking back on it, I have absolutely had to do that, so it was a good decision. Marriage changed me.
The first one or the second one?
We don't talk about that other one. Marrying Judi, her and I had a pretty selfish, stubborn relationship in the beginning. But through the years, Judy's taught me a lot of compassion and compromise. So just by virtue of our relationship, I've become a better person. I'm far superior than a lot of society because of Judi.
Yeah, I think our relationship started with, why aren't you acting the way I expect you to act? That's what a lot of the arguments. Why aren't you acting the way you should be? Because that's what I expect.
And age, that's a good question, Dad. I reflect on it often. It could be a long one to address, so I'll make it short for now. A few years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, my brain started really looking at my own mortality. That's where I started questioning my alcohol consumption. I think once I got sober, my outlook on age changed. We have so much more time in the day that I have a lot more time to reflect and make sure that I'm going down a path of serenity, that becomes my focus. I've caught myself maturing a lot quicker. Sounds stupid. I've caught myself maturing faster the older I get into a good position. But I think that's also compounded by the fact that I got sober at 50 years old.
Yeah, you put yourself through 3+ decades of arrested development.
Right.
Now you're finally picking back up.
Yeah. It's good questions, Dad. Patrick and Judi and I, we owe, and Dad, maybe food for thought for you. Emily asked me a question that we've been meaning to address. It's a long question. It's a really good one. I think we may start to tackle it, Patrick, during our drama triangle. Food for thought for everybody, and that is give 5 reasons how society misjudges or has a misnomer about alcoholism. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I can tell you one reason right off the top that comes, we all drink too much alcohol, and there's too much out there, and there are too many people who can't handle it. And that's why there's, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and drunks who get into accidents, and et cetera, and we just can't handle it.
Yeah, the question is, though, what are misconceptions that society has about alcoholics?
That drinking is good.
Yes, true.
I thought about this when you pitched it towards me, and I don't know if I can do a bulleted list, but they all stem from the fact that it's a spectrum, meaning it's not a one size fits all. It's not a black and white binary thing. I'm not an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic. The DSM refers to this as alcohol use disorder.
Tell
an
our listeners.
alcoholic.
Tell our listeners what the DSM is, please, Patrick.
Well, now that you, oh my
It's
gosh.
the psychological manual, basically the handbook for shrinks.
The agreed upon, neurological behaviors that have common diagnoses, and it's a set of behaviors. Alcohol use disorder is basically summed up by saying, if you use alcohol, regardless of its negative consequences, and there's a dependency upon it. That's a very shortened synopsis, but that's very different from what's defined as an alcoholic, because somebody could abuse alcohol, alcohol abuse, and also not be an alcoholic. What I'm trying to say is it's a collection of behaviors, and there's a spectrum here, and this is why I'm trying to say, like, the misnomer is either you are or you're not. And the reality is there's so much gray area that we need to build our own toolkits very individually, and we need to have a very humanistic approach to it. It's not like you're an alcoholic, I'm going to remove alcohol from your life and we're going to be cured. There's, at its core, is an addiction mechanism. And in fact, this has been seen that, alcohol may be what's chosen for us, or what we chose, but there are many other people that have very similar disorders where it's another medium. It may be another drug, and it may be another behavior, like shopping is one, cutting, food. At the very, so what I'm trying to get at is the misnomer of alcoholism is very binary. Either you are or you're not, and this is a single cure. And this, I've spoken to this before. There are modalities that we need to be able to embark on to begin to address these issues. I personally believe, there in our society that we as a society have a high level of stress, and this is relatively new to us due to the sheer amount of information and everything that we've built, and the diminishing part of the family dynamic, just because of the way the industrialized nations has worked. When a mother is pregnant, if this is how early it starts, if she is under stress all the time and has cortisol just pumping through her system, that is really going to affect, physically, that affects, like, the number of dopamine receptors and everything in the child's mind shuts down. They are by nature set on a path towards addiction before they even step out of the womb. I'm not saying they are all enabled, but what I'm trying to say is we have a set amount of circumstances that bring us down these paths and fire from the very minute that we are born. Now all of a sudden you deal with parental relationships, inability to be recognized, and if we can't rely on our parents for complete emotional regulation, then that begins the disconnect, right? And where do you seek? And that's the beginning of the void to avoid.
Or if the parents are just not there.
Yeah. So if you can't emotionally regulate with them, right, your coping mechanisms have been born under a stressful situation, so you only know how to respond with stress, right? Bringing this back to your question of the misnomer of alcoholics, is there's the misnomer that hey, it's genetic, it's just going to be passed. I am or I'm not. There are markers to say that we have a predilection to it, but that is just the framework. It is our environment that ultimately expresses those genes when it comes about, and it is set way before that we can even think. It's not like we magically wake up and say, hey, I'm 21, I'm an alcoholic now. Like, I'm sorry, we have to go back to the very beginning to see all these dominoes set up. Like you said, John, once we start telling these stories, it's really amazing to see all these patterns emerge. So the misnomer is alcohol is binary. There's one cure, and if you do X, Y, and Z, you can be on that path. This is a life. I am in recovery for the rest of my life.
Yep.
I don't care if how high I get. This is something that I know I have to live with and honor the fact that these are my coping mechanisms. And for a while, alcohol was one of them. And I will always have to deal with that.
Yeah. See, Emily, I told you this is that we haven't even scratched the surface. That's why it's such a good question. The misconception that I came up with, the first one, was that society they just have a picture of an alcoholic. I'm very open about my struggles. So when I just, it's come up at work, people are like, "Oh, I heard you had a podcast. What do you talk about?" And I say, "Well, I'm an alcoholic, so I like to talk about my alcoholism and addiction." And some people, the gears start going in their head, and they're like, "What the fuck?" They don't know, like, "Oh my God." And I just want to go, draw a picture of the alcoholic you're seeing in your head, because I'm super curious. Because they're like, you're a manager and you're not in the gutter dying. I'm like, wow.
You still have all your teeth.
Yeah. There's a ton of those misconceptions. And damn it, I had a good thought, Patrick. It'll come to us. We'll do it on the Sober Mind Rewind. But
Patrick, I hate to do this, but I disagree with you.
oh, let's hear it.
Oh, okay.
And that being said, then, do we really want to continue this conversation? Because it could get rather long.
Oh, there goes the confrontation.
No,
Well?
no, it's not that. It's just that I'm looking at the clock. I think it gets down to nature versus nurture. And if you are born to alcoholic parents, you're just liable to be an alcoholic yourself. Or the other way around is that you're not going to be an alcoholic at all, and you're going to campaign for getting rid of alcohol. And
Do you think it's so black and white there? You know, I know many alcoholics that have developed under quote unquote loving families. You know, I've seen it happen with affluent families where parents try to buy their affection with kids, right? They are unable to emotionally regulate their children. And so I've seen those addictive behaviors stem out of otherwise, you know, in the past 30 years ago, we'd be like, why would this person become addicted to meth, right? They had everything laid out for them, you know, and this is what I'm trying to get at about addiction. It affects all of us, regardless of, you know, you say nature versus nurture, but there are all aspects of our environment that can contribute to this. And ultimately, it comes down that if they have not learned to emotionally regulate themselves, then we can foster addictive behaviors. You know, this 500 years ago, we didn't have this many people addicted to alcohol or anything else. You know, what I'm trying to say with that is, like, these are known biological things that we have passed down to our children, and I'm going to pass on down to my children about how they emotionally deal with things. I think you bring up a good point about the nature versus nurture thing, but it is important to realize that this is what I'm trying to say about the misnomer of addiction. It can happen to all of us, right?
Yeah.
And being able to find the human side is very important. You know, when we look at the addict down wherever you want to put, imagine in the inner city, you know, hustling, and you're just like, you know, the war on drugs has painted this nasty picture of just an evil person, right? Like they made their own choices. They have been, but if you've ever sat and talked to any of them, you know, like the amount of hurt and pain in some of those lives is just out. I would be an addict too.
Yeah. Usually,
You know?
usually anybody, like the book that we read. Well, I'm still reading, but the Ghosts in the, oh God, what's
In
the
the
name
realm
of
of hungry ghosts.
Yes,
In
in
the
the
re-
realm of
in-
hungry ghosts. It goes into that pretty deep as far as the picture that society has of an addict and the addict themselves, and the hurt and the desolation that these people have gone through, that somebody looking on the outside doesn't even register in their brain. They just look at that person and say, oh, they're an addict, they chose this life, they chose to be this way, not realizing that these people have suffered tremendous hurt and neglect and pain to get to this place that they're at that point.
Or not. They could have had nothing. Pure perfect guidance and growth, and then next thing you know, they're prescribed Percocet at a dental visit, and
Yeah.
so goes the path.
Mm-hmm.
And they
The only thing about that is that I understand that it's not black and white. I understand that it's gray. And there are a lot of people out there who can, we'll say, go out with friends, have a couple glasses of wine, and that's it. Thank you very much. And there's a tremendous amount of people out there like that. We're kind of painting it black and white. And I think that the ones that are sober and don't drink, and the ones that are alcoholic and do drink, are a smaller portion of the population than people in the middle who can have a couple glasses of wine or have a couple of beers, and thank you very much. And I think that there's more of those people out there than there is on the extremes.
You're right, but Dad, so that you're right. This is going to turn into a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
What statistics show is there are those, but then you need to also bundle them up with a lack of honesty for people proclaiming, "Are you an alcoholic?" and then say no. But then their statistics don't dig into the next factor of, are you into child porn? Are you a gambler? Are you
food again?
Are you a food addict? Are you a pedophile, or do you have a foot fetish? You know what I mean? There's a whole rabbit hole you can go down to of what addiction is.
Oh yeah, yeah. But again, I get back to the major portion of the population is not on either end of the spectrum. The major portion of the population is in the middle, and therefore you can't tar everyone with the same brush.
State your source for these facts, sir.
No, I would agree with him there. Like, and this is why I begin to speak about the modalities and understanding the cures or recovery for a lot of these things. I think there's a statistic about, like something like 80% of the alcohol in the United States is consumed by the top 10%.
Ooh.
But I may be off on that, but what I'm trying to say, it's a very asymmetrical relationship, saying that the top portion drinks more than the lion's share of booze. But if you were to ask the people, if you were to survey the people in the midst of that, in the top 10%, would be like, I drink like a normal person, right?
It's like when we go to the doctor and they ask, there's that question on there, how many drinks do you consume in a week? We all just I remember doing the math in my head. I'm like, I cannot put down that I drink half a case of beer a day. Dr. Hale's gonna lose.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll spread that into a week. Man, it gets you really thinking too. Doctors know better. They're like, if they put 3, that means they drink at least 9 a day. Okay. Go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to say, to Kellen's point, though, that's how we thought. Some doctors, like, they may be like, yes, they're the ones that would pull it back. And then, there's other people that they would say, like, if they say I drink 1 or 2 a week, they could, yes.
Yes.
3 beers a week. So, I mean, eventually the signs and symptoms are going to manifest themselves, and the doctor's going to look at that person and go, you are fully lying right now.
Modalities, a doctor may be able to see he drinks X amount a week. And ultimately, it's our relationship, it's in our attachment with that. And we have to give space to find these and look at. I will be an advocate for more humanistic approaches regarding mental health and breaking the stigmas, because Kellen, you are right. In the bell curve, there are people at the extremes, but to assume that those are the only people that we have to deal with problems or issues or to sort through, I want to kind of dispel that and say, like, you know what, everybody deserves a right to kind of like begin to sort this thing out and heal in their way necessary. So that's what I want to try and dispel with alcohol use disorder and alcoholism, is like, regardless of your relationship with it, like if you feel like you're at the extremes or not, you should be allowed tools to look inward to begin to understand that.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Yeah,
I
Dad.
agree.
I don't want to tar, if someone has a couple of beers, I don't want to tar them as alcoholic.
No, we're not saying
No,
that at all.
we're not saying that at all. It's just that everybody should be allowed to have the tools to self-explore, I guess.
Yeah, we are our own worst parents sometimes.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to be respectful of everyone's time and scheduling for this. Dad, this has been an awesome discussion. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Dad.
I think you set up a topic for a whole nother series, not let alone like another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I'm thinking, Patrick, I haven't even floated this by you, but when we do the drama triangle, let's have Dad on and we'll all four of us just have a discussion about it and dig into it. You want to be a co-host on that one, Dad?
Sure.
All right. I think I'd like your perspective.
The drama quadrilateral.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yes, Judi?
No, I just don't. Does he know about the triangle and what it is?
No,
Well,
but...
when we do the episode, we can definitely go over it.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We'll do baby steps, because I think it's a very important concept that we get the foundational understanding, at least an agreed upon state for all of us.
I'll
We start digging into it.
It's literally a triangle of the rescuer and I'll show you
Codependency.
Codependency, a 10-minute video. It's a really good primer for a discussion. Okay, this has been amazing. I forgot. I'm gonna, babe, heads up. I'm gonna spend some money today. I'm getting the Elgato foot pedal because, man, look at that, Dad. Is that cool? The Patrick cam.
Yeah.
Patrick, you're not seeing it, but I'm using the Stream Deck to go full screen.
You know, it freezes you, by the way.
Oh, it does?
Yes. For us.
The live stream feed is fine. We'll
Okay.
get together. We'll play with
just
that
us
more.
see it. Just we see it. That's
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Happy Saturday.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Take care of yourselves.
Be kind to yourselves.
Be kind to yourselves. Be patient. If you're got the 988 number up there on the top and the Al-Anon, if you ever have suicidal thoughts or ideation, please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction or alcoholism, which are all the same, or any of that stuff, and you want to find a path to start to talk to someone, check out Al-Anon. Fantastic organization. Okay, thank you for all of the support we've been getting on this. Oh, I just remember what I was going to say, Patrick, and that is I got a comment on one of my videos that I left on one of the shorts, and someone came back and said, "Are you an alcoholic or a recovering alcoholic?" Because there's a huge difference. I was like, I replied, I'm like, I'm not putting a label on that. I'm an alcoholic. I'm gonna not be recovered for the rest of my life. I'm just telling you what.
Yeah, like Kellen would say, I'm sitting on the fence. The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah,
Calling me an alcoholic is like saying water's wet.
that's
But
right.
I'm also in recovery. They are not mutually exclusive.
That's right. Okay. Thank you so much. If you get anything from what you've seen or heard, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps us out a lot. Dad, thank you again. For everybody else, we'll see you on the Sober Mind Rewind on Tuesday night. Man, we got some good discussions. I'm going to talk to Judi today, Patrick, and Dad, and we'll try and figure it out. And we're going to shortly post our agenda for next Saturday's conversation. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your weekend. Be well, and we'll see you guys next time.